Tonight, inside the Sydney hospital, described as a chamber of horrors.
Sir Joe's flat tax plan, could it work?
And Liz Taylor tells of the good years and the bad.
Eyewitness News with Steve Liebmann and Robyn Johnston.
Good evening. Also tonight, a possible AIDS breakthrough being tested in Sydney.
And big compensation payouts for 3 men jailed for the Hilton bombing.
The Newcastle State Dockyard will close. Public Works Minister Laurie Brereton announced the decision just a short time ago after workers at the dockyard refused to end a week-long strike in protest against government moves to scale down the dockyard.
Dockyard. This dockyard is being closed because of the decision of the men on the job to reject the reform package that could have saved 180 jobs. And that's a thing of great regret, both for this government and indeed for Newcastle.
So the dockyard will be closed. Will it be sold off?
The dockyard facilities will be put to public tender, and the government will be seeking to maximise the creation of employment opportunities in the Newcastle region. The floating dock will remain in Newcastle, but be put out to floating to tender. That the government, in those public tenders, will be looking for the best tender that will create the most jobs in the Newcastle region.
New South Wales Public Works Minister Laurie Brereton. After hitting a $15.70 a share high just a week ago and in the process turning some shareholders into overnight millionaires, stock market favourite the Private Blood Bank of Australia Limited continued its fall from grace today. At the same time, the stock exchange says it has a number of questions it wants the company's principals to answer. Nearly 90% of Private Blood Bank shares have changed hands since the company was listed almost 10 weeks ago. Tonight, reporter Alan Solly has more.
Stockbrokers' phones rang hot, with clients wanting to get out of Blood Bank shares at any price. Minutes after trading began, the shares had fallen to $7, down from their recent high of over $15. Blood Bank shares finished the day at $9.90. All this amid rumours that the company's managing director, Peter Walker, had resigned, following claims that he had found a cure for AIDS. But the company wasn't commenting. Armed guards barred entry to its Lane Cove headquarters. When we asked, who is the managing director of Private Blood, we were told that information cannot be divulged. Now, that's an odd response for a public company that is required by law to at least inform the stock exchange of any change in directorship. As it happens, the stock exchange also wants to know who the managing director is, and they have 1 or 2 questions of their own for Private Blood. The stock exchange wants to know more about the AIDS cure claim. Blood Bank shares enjoyed a meteoric rise since their listing at $1 last December, a run for which many brokers have blamed emotional buying prompted by the AIDS scare. But the bubble appears to have burst, particularly in the Midwest, where Private Blood Bank has shelved multi-million-dollar expansion plans. This building at Orange was to have housed a new laboratory. The project is now long overdue. Alan Solly, Eyewitness News.
We're still not doing enough to stop the spread of AIDS. That's the urgent message tonight from doctors and health officials who are trying to make life easier for the victims. Their warning comes on the eve of the first Australian trial of a new drug, which offers the AIDS victims some hope.
Sydney St Vincent's Hospital has just taken delivery of $500,000 worth of azathromycin, for short, AZT. And during the next 6 months, 43 grateful AIDS patients here and in Melbourne will take it during trials aimed at beating the disease. Similar tests in America last year saw only 1 of 160 patients on AZT die. The rest felt better, put on weight and survived. Yet there were 16 deaths among a similar number of AIDS patients monitored in America, but not given the new drug. It has advantages.
Fortunately, this drug has one of the criteria that we were all looking for an anti-AIDS drug, which is the ability to take it orally. And it is quite highly effective orally and works orally, so patients just have to take tablets.
Health officials praise Sydney's gay community for the support it has given its victims, the warnings it has issued about the need for safe sex. However, the problem is more widespread.
Of course, there are those who attack the gay community and say that careless homosexuals deserve everything they get and that AIDS would never be a problem for them. Well, not so, say the experts. The disease is already spreading among heterosexuals.
Sydney Hospital's Albion Street Clinic has 80 intravenous drug users on its books, both men and women. All heterosexual, most rely on prostitution in King's Cross to feed expensive drug habits, and they're causing concern. The state government has allowed pharmacies to sell syringes at $5 for only $3.50, so users won't share their needles. And Carol McCaskey of the Alcohol and Drug Information Collective in Surrey Hills says thousands of disease-carrying syringes are now being dumped after use.
There's no method for getting them back, so I think any system must be an exchange system to safeguard the community as well.
You'll recall that at this time yesterday, State Deputy Opposition Leader Peter Collins was making startling allegations about the abuse of patients at a Sydney hospital. Today, that hospital has defended itself, claiming staff are working with substandard facilities, as the New South Wales Health Department was launching an investigation into Mr Collins' allegations. The Cumberland Hospital's Executive Officer, Dr Bill McSwiggan, was conceding that deaths and injuries have occurred. Tim Lester today toured the hospital.
Buildings in Cumberland Hospital are substandard.
Cumberland Hospital's chief executive on Cumberland Hospital. But it is not the buildings which have been placed under public scrutiny by comments in Parliament. The state opposition's health spokesman was talking about administration and patient care when he referred to 4 deaths, over 1,000 patient injuries and hundreds of cases of assault and self-mutilation.
We really need a far-reaching public inquiry into the standard and state of mental health in New South Wales today.
The head of what is the only major psychiatric hospital serving Sydney's West is a practising psychiatrist. From his Strathfield rooms this afternoon, he admitted the accident spoken about could have occurred prior to his taking the chief executive's position last year.
This is part and parcel of life in psychiatric hospitals. We have tragedies. We have tragedies on an average 1 or 2 every year.
When replying to opposition claims of a cover-up in relation to the deaths and injuries, Health Minister Peter Anderson backed away from expressing confidence in staff at Cumberland. Now, even the hospital's chief executive has admitted he can't vouch for his staff 100%.
Yes, I can express full confidence in the staff. I'm not going to express full confidence in 100% of the staff because obviously that'd be crazy. Like every other organisation, including Channel 10, we are always going to have a percentage of deviant staff.
Staff at the hospital are upset about the allegations. They hope the current Health Department inquiry will clear them and demonstrate a need for greater public spending on psychiatric care. Tim Lester, Eyewitness News.
A Sydney anti-drugs campaigner shot while investigating an anonymous phone tip-off about a drug deal today discounted claims that he was set up. Trevor King of Carlingford believes the call was genuine and that he was simply another victim of Sydney's rapidly spreading suburban drug problem.
56-year-old Trevor King was Australian lightweight boxing champion in the 50s, deprived of a chance at the world crown by a serious car accident only weeks before a scheduled challenge. For 13 years, he and his wife have run the Caring and Sharing mission, which includes drug prevention and drug rehabilitation counselling. Last night, an anonymous caller informed him of a drug deal about to take place in a park across the road from the mission. After 15 minutes searching the area, Trevor walked across the football field into a dark, wooded gully. It was here the gunman confronted him, poking what Trevor thought was a finger into his chest. The finger turned out to be a pistol, which discharged when Trevor tried to push it away. The result, a bullet right through his side, and questions about why he didn't call police.
I didn't just go over there just for the heck of it because I thought I could do a better job. By the time the police got here, from a myriad of other jobs they had to do, these fellows would be long since gone.
He doesn't criticise police, claiming they do the best possible job with insufficient numbers to fight increased serious suburban crime and drug abuse.
That's only the thing with the wedge. We're only seeing the results of the drug trade in this country, just the beginning.
Were you set up last night?
No.
Trevor King believes the person who shot him was standing guard for a drug deal he saw in the background. It occurred in an area where in the past he's recovered dozens of syringes, weapons and other drug implements. Peter McCarthy, Eyewitness News.
A 4-hour hostage drama at Parramatta Jail last night has prompted an immediate review of security at the Sydney prison. Tonight, Tony Barneo reports that the trouble began when an inmate due to be released in just 3 months grabbed a fellow inmate and threatened to kill him unless his demands for better conditions were met.
Corrective Services hostage negotiation teams were called to the prison after an armed inmate in the strict protection wing took another prisoner hostage. Police allege 33-year-old Paul Jones, serving 5 years for stealing offences, took fellow inmate Stephen Robinson captive as Robinson opened his cell to feed him. Robinson was dragged into the cell at knife point, a noose made from a skipping rope placed around his neck. It's alleged Jones then bared the wires from a length of electrical flex, wrapped them around the hostage's neck and then around an earring, and connected the other end to a power socket. A Prospect County Council crew was called in to disconnect the prison's power supply. Police were also planning to storm the cell once the power was turned off. Jones demanded all prisoners in the jail be released and his mother be brought to the maximum security complex. As negotiators attempted to talk Jones out, police located his mother and took her to the jail. A short time later, Jones released his hostage, who suffered lacerations and bruises to the neck. He was then arrested. Corrective Services Minister John Ackerster said Jones had apparently consumed a quantity of illicit alcohol brewed by fellow prisoners.
We'll be conducting an investigation into all the circumstances surrounding that event so that we might, if possible, prevent it happening again.
Jones was returned here to Parramatta Jail after a brief court appearance where he faced charges of abduction and assault. He will remain in protective custody until a further court appearance next week. Tony Barneo, Eyewitness News.
The state government has announced it will pay compensation to 3 members of the Ananda Marga sect who claimed they'd spent 7 years in jail for a crime they did not commit. Paul Alistair, Tim Anderson and Ross Dunn will receive $100,000 each for what's been called, quote, their rehabilitation into society, end quote. With the details, our state political reporter, Paul Mullins.
State Cabinet approved the payment of $100,000 each to the Ananda Marga trio, Paul Alistair, Tim Anderson and Ross Dunn, who were pardoned in 1985 after spending 7 years in jail for conspiracy to murder a leader of the National Front organisation. The Margies professed their innocence throughout, and an inquiry ordered by the late Attorney General Paul Lander found a doubt existed concerning their guilt. In September last year, Cabinet rejected calls for compensation, but it changed its mind following a second report, this time from Chester Porter QC. Attorney General Terry Sheehan said Cabinet accepted the recommendation that there should be an ex gratia payment to the men for their rehabilitation into society.
I believe that given the decision of the last inquiry, the decision that set them free, I think the decision of the government to say, look, on a common sense basis, we'll make you an ex gratia payment. We have no absolute legal or moral obligation, but we as representatives of society think you deserve something to ease your way back into society. I personally and the opposition wouldn't find that objectionable.
For years, the Ananda Marga members claimed they'd been framed, and that was a view shared by a number of backbench members of the state government. And I'm told today the Labor caucus took no time at all to accept the recommendation for compensation handed to them by the Cabinet. Paul Mullins, Eyewitness News.
More earthquakes rocked New Zealand's Bay of Plenty today, but they were nowhere near on the scale of Monday's severe tremor, which caused millions of dollars damage. We've just received this report from Television New Zealand.
The Hahuru Marae has become a sanctuary from the terror of the earthquakes for 1,000 people from the town of Te Teko and the surrounding area. They were evacuated after Monday's big quake, when there were fears about the safety of the Matahina Dam up the valley. Now many people still fear returning to the damage in their homes as the tremors and the aftershocks continue. The people on the Marae have had another rough night. Several tremors meant a sleepless night for many. People are finding it hard to leave the safety of the Marae.
As soon as there was a tremor, the adults went and covered the little ones. The little ones didn't feel anything because they were asleep.
Civil Defence believe the clean-up must continue in Te Teko. Officials flew to the Marae to urge people to return home just during the day if necessary. As the officials spoke, another quake shook the Marae, temporarily disrupting the meeting. Despite the scare, people began to urge others to return to Te Teko. People began trickling back to begin the task of pulling their shattered lives together, but it may be days before some people are prepared to spend the night.
After this break, Katrina Lee reports on Sir Joe Bjelke-Petersen's flat tax plan. Could he make it work, or would we all pay more? There were more rowdy demonstrations on the land today, with another large auction of repossessed farming machinery. Ironically, the auction comes as heavy rains are breaking the drought in much of the state.
Hundreds of farmers from around New South Wales and parts of Queensland attended the auction at Moree. Only a handful were there to buy. The rest were struggling farmers determined to stop the sale. Loud hailer versus loud hailer. Farmers shouted down the auctioneer with screams of "give it back" and "no sale."
That tractor has not been repossessed. I gave it back to them.
Police stood back and only moved in when the odd piece of machinery did find an owner. What was selling well was Joe T-shirts. But protest organisers claim success, saying only 2 of the 40 machines on offer were sold. Ironically, one of the main